to a live episode of Surviving the Survivor. We bring you the best guests in all of true crime. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. Here's your host, Emmy Award-winning broadcaster, Joel Waldman.
What's up, STS Nation, and welcome to another live episode of Surviving the Survivor, the podcast that promises to bring you the very best guests in all of true crime. And a disclaimer right off the top. Meave Moan and I, we just landed back in South Florida. By landed, I mean we were in the car for 8+ hours. There is a torrential rainstorm with lightning straight out of a Halloween movie. And if you lose me, Tim Jansen will take the reins and I will hop on my cell phone. So that is the disclaimer. The COE, who is south of me, I am coming to you from an undisclosed location in a clubhouse in Boynton Beach, Florida. The COE has lost power in Miami. I can see her trying to get back on. It is Noah's Ark type flooding and rain here in South Florida. Sure, it's nice and dry up in Tallahassee, but we are going to go through a bunch of things. The COE, rain. Sorry, Tim. We're going to go through a bunch of things here from yesterday into today. As most of you know, I usually come pretty well prepared with a actual rundown of things to talk about. I got out of the car about 9 minutes ago. So we're going to have Tim and Katie and the general break this down. Obviously, you all know Tim Jansen, famed Tallahassee criminal defense attorney, a partner in the firm that bears his name, Jansen and Davis. And he was a federal prosecutor 5 years prior to that. So he knows both sides of the proverbial aisle, defense and prosecution. And then you've got the general, Mark Davidson. He started his career as a prosecutor straight out of law school in 1994. He had a windy career, constantly moving up in the world. He was able to return to the district attorney's office in 2011 and then was elected district attorney in August of 2018. The top dog in his county. So there you go. Very smart legal mind. And last but not least, she's not a lawyer, but she knows about as much as an attorney. She is Katie Cool Lady, otherwise known as Kathy Monkman-Hyan. And we just saw Katie last night. We had an amazing time. I think I can reveal this without revealing any names, but Tim, Steve Cohen, Katie Cool Lady, and myself may or may not have had dinner with Mr. Bump Man last night, who was telling us some amazing stories. And that's why I like to go. That's why I like to go to these trials, be there in person. You just never know who you're going to meet. It was really amazing. Again, I'm sort of planning on this being an unmitigated disaster because of the tech issues. But you've got Tim Jansen, steady as a regatta yacht. He will steer the conversation if things go amiss here. But so Tim Jansen, we have had less than, I think, 24 hours to really absorb this. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe a little over 24 hours. What are your thoughts today coming off of the disaster, talking about unmitigated disasters that we just witnessed in the Leon County Courthouse?
Well, first of all, we had a lovely dinner. I hope you enjoyed the restaurant. The food was great, wasn't it? And
yeah,
I'll tell
by
you
the way, Tim treated, so an amazing gesture there. Thank you.
Thank you.
The company was great. The fish was great. And listening to the Bump guy was awesome. Listen to how they planned it, how they were going to approach Donna, what kind of demeanor he was going to do. Him and Pat Sanford talked about the demeanor. And then how he had the phones, which phone, and when he got the call from Sigfredo, and then when he got the call, it was fascinating. Here is his side of the story. Those are things you don't see. You can't read on a board, and you don't see it in trial because they don't discuss that stuff. And he did acknowledge that Mr. Sanford, Agent Sanford, was very happy to put the handcuffs on Donna on the tarmac at the airport. So as we all know, Pat was the one that really broke this story. He probably should have got the director's award at the FBI for what he did on this case. And I don't think he did, but maybe it's not too late. It was an unmitigated disaster yesterday. As soon as I saw the motions, I called you 2 nights ago and said, hey, this is serious stuff. I let the Democrat know this is serious stuff. This could derail this whole thing. And then after the morning show, the morning after they took some testimony, I told you, I said, this thing is over. This trial is not moving forward. He's going to have to declare a mistrial. Dan's going to have to withdraw, and he's going to do an in-camera of both lawyers to see if Alex can stay on. And unfortunately, that's what happened. But a lot of people are to blame. It's not just Dan. A lot of people dropped the ball. But I will say this. Any experienced lawyer knows if you don't have a waiver in writing, you don't have a waiver. Okay? It's not a real waiver. And that waiver can be changed and taken back at any time. So what the problems that could arise, they did arise.
To the general, Mark Davidson, by the way, why was the bump guy in tally? Can't really disclose that, but he came to say hello. He is and what he was scheduled to testify in this trial. He's testified in the previous trials, but shout out to him, and I hope he's sporting his STS hat that I gave him. But to the general, Mark Davidson, is Tim right? Is this lawyering 101 in terms of having a signed waiver as opposed to an oral agreement about the waiver, which is what it appears to have been?
It's so basic that I was floored when I read that Rashbaum said he had a waiver, but then said he didn't have it in writing. I thought, well, you never had a waiver, and something so basic for any lawyer with any experience, especially in criminal defense with multiple defendants. Come on, this is, and part of me kind of wondered, well, did Georgia not see this coming? Because it is, it's a pretty obvious conflict. So it seemed like everybody probably thought he had gotten all the written waivers and that this was put to rest, but before trial. So to have that motion filed on the eve of trial was just stunning to me.
Yeah, we're going to dig into it. By the way, this is a true story. Steve Cohen, myself, and Katie went to lunch yesterday. And literally at the courthouse across the street was a Geek Squad van. COE, if you can pull that up, I know people will not believe me unless they see the video. And by the way, I posted it on Instagram at Surviving the Survivor. I don't know if that's a sign from above, but it was certainly bizarre to see a Best Buy Geek Squad van, literally the first thing we see when we walk out to go to lunch. Katie Cool Lady, I know Katie, for those who do not know, is basically a victims' rights advocate. Her own sister tragically murdered. So these trials are very emotional, understandably. Katie, just how are you feeling after sitting through this with Tim and I yesterday?
Well, fortunate that I had you guys, and again, to echo what you said, that dinner last night was, I don't know about you guys. I went to bed with I felt like my soul was just filled up. I thought Oscar, or, the bump guy was just so, such an amazing human being. And I could have sat there for a whole week of those stories. I thought it was just utterly fascinating, and also picking your brains about what was going on. I was really glad to not be alone, after the trauma of what happened. And I spent pretty much most of 2 days with Tim. So I had, a legal mind, informing me. So, but I have a question for both you guys, both you lawyers. And that, did you catch where I think it was Alex Morris, who, when he was asked, like, why did you not get the signed waiver, said, oh, well, because he was in close custody, we couldn't get a signature. And I thought, that sounds like my dog ate my homework. Like, they could have gotten a signature, right? He was blaming it all because Charlie was in close custody, but he was in close custody there in Florida.
General, why don't you take that? To Katie's point, these are attorneys with access. Charlie was transported. He was in Leon County, and they should have known about this. Why not? Why were they unable to get this waiver?
They shouldn't have had any problem getting it, in my opinion. They have access to him, especially with the trial looming and the need to prep him for possible testimony. So I find it hard to believe that a lack of access is a real bona fide excuse here. It just looks like it is what it is, where Rashbaum just got a verbal waiver and felt good with that, I guess, which really surprises me. And then when it became apparent that Charlie was going to revoke that, I guess verbally, and they tried to get some type of written waiver, and he wouldn't do it, that was the end of that. So I don't see any reason why I don't think the close custody thing is a real issue.
And by the way, go ahead, Kathy. No, go ahead.
When I heard that, it's like it sort of made me feel like the whole thing is now looking shady, because it seems like they're making up this dog ate my homework thing about why they didn't get the signature, instead of just saying we thought the verbal would be enough. Now they're sort of making up an excuse, and then that taints the whole thing in my view. Now I'm looking at the whole thing thinking it's shady. I mean, I don't know what is shady, but it just looks shady on their side.
Yeah, Tim, what I was going to get to, and I hear you, Katie, but Tim, what I was going to get to, they couldn't get a signature, but that might not even have mattered, because Charlie then basically rescinded any idea of signing a waiver to begin with. What we're going to get to that, COE. I'm well aware. Thank you so much. Tim Jansen, did Charlie, and we're going to, this is, by the way, going to be the theme of tomorrow's show, which is at 12:30 p.m. Eastern time. Tomorrow's show, like this one, will be fantastic. We've got a psychologist coming on. We have Tommy Scoville, a former inmate, and Joe Patuto, the professor, the law professor. It's going to be an interesting combination. But Tim, is it fair to say that Charlie, in a way, flipped on his own mother yesterday by rejecting the waiver?
Well, let's go back. In December is when he said he called to get the waiver over the phone, and another lawyer was present. All right. So if they had him on the phone, they know where he was located. They had access. They had 9 months to get someone to go out to that jail to put it in writing. All right. It always can be changed. But what should have happened is that he should have brought it to the notice of the court. When they were talking about the waiver and conflict with Rash representing him because of his advice he gave her about fleeing, multiple times the judge asked her about the waiver, and she had a conflict and she understood. At no point did Daniel, either on purpose or because of incompetence, say, Judge, we have this other issue and I don't have it in writing, but I have an oral waiver, and if this could change, but I think we're okay. If he would have told the parties that, then they could have got a hold of Offerman, and this could have been done months ago before Alex got on, and they could have had separate counsel, and we could be going to trial. So the question is, did Dan do this purposeful, or was it mere incompetence? And I said from the start, he's too close to the Adelsons. He should not have represented Donna after he represented Charlie. He should have foresaw this was going to happen, but he didn't do it for some reason. And my understanding, he apologized to Georgia and said, my bad, on a hot mic. And you saw her response. When the judge asked her, she's like, I don't think I can give the appropriate response. So, but Georgia and the state should have known the same thing. They have a duty to protect their convictions and their trial, as well as the judge has a duty to protect the trial. Everybody kind of dropped the ball, but it really was in Dan's. He started it.
Yeah, I'm going to get to the general on this. COE, can you pull up, because I don't know the order of bites. COE has a soundbite related to the question I just asked him about whether he flipped. This is Alex Morris.
Ultimately, the question is whether or not their positions are at odds with one another, and there's absolutely the potential of that. And that's the issue.
General, it'd be nice to not wait till the eve of the trial and jury selection to, I guess, reveal this. Again, the title of the thumbnail tonight is "Who's to Blame?" I don't want to point the finger. Steve Cohen often says, "Don't point the finger, point the thumb." But in this case, that would do me no good because I had nothing to do with this. Who is to blame here, General?
Well, they've known about the conflict, or should have known about it, since Donna was arrested. Well, I say that as soon as Rashbaum, made it was known that he was going to be her attorney. Any again, any attorney with any experience as a defense lawyer should immediately recognize that conflict. And Morris here in this video states it as if it's as plain as the nose on your face, which is also what the judge said. So for this to lay down, under the radar for all these months, as Tim has pointed out, really you have to blame Rashbaum. I think. Now I agree that the prosecution should have been concerned about the apparent conflict and whether or not these defense lawyers were doing everything they should to put this to rest and to get around it. But it's a big one to get around. I mean, it's a 1,000-pound gorilla, and for that thing to have been sitting there all this time and nobody heard a word from the defense team. I can't help but point the finger at the defense on this.
By the way, in the coming days, Steve Cohen and I were talking on the way down, and it was active conversation, as Steve likes to say. And, in the next couple of days, we'll do a show on how the Florida bar handles this. Steve's already reached out to the bar, the Florida State Bar. We're also going to do a show about the appellate process, like what is behind Charlie's motivations here. So there are going to be some really interesting sort of deep dives into the specifics of this as we move forward. Tim, I want to say something. Tim made a bold statement yesterday because he had a very strong source. I walked it back a little bit when he said this was all going to implode. And I'm the first one, if we make a mistake, to call it out. If you recall, it was a year ago that we got a tip about Donna Adelson's arrest. I had 3 different sources on that, and so I went to air with it. And just with Steve Cohen and myself and the COE's background in media, we're careful, but we had 3 very strong sources. And Tim is a Tallahassee insider, and I trusted him. And lo and behold, he was absolutely correct. And by the way, there was a person who had emailed me. I told Tim this, saying that Tim was going to get it wrong, and then sent me an apology email today saying that Tim was 100% correct about this. So he had the moxie, to come forward and tell me that he was in fact wrong about Tim. Tim, I want to play this. So Alex pretty well. I'm just going to play this soundbite one more time. There we go. And tell me, I have to bring it in. That's why it's not playing here. Let's just listen.
The question is whether ultimately the question is whether or not their positions are at odds with one another, and there's absolutely the potential of that. And that's the issue.
Tim, I know you're friends with them, but I want to play
poker. I want to play poker with Alex because I know when he's got a good hand, he's going to tell me pretty well. He's going to tell me. What did he tell you? He told you one of the elements is, one, is there a conflict? And is it at odds? And if he was going to do the double extortion theory again and preserve his appeal, they wouldn't be at odds. So it looks like there's going to be a different defense. And he also says that in his soundbite. The new areas of defense are on the table. And he also says, well, maybe plea negotiations. I will tell you that Alex does like to enter a plea when he can. He'll do what's in the best interest of his client. He's not doing this for glam, and he's not doing for glitter. He's not getting a lot of money. He takes some cases court appointed. So he's going to do what's in the best interest of his client. And I think we have not seen that in this case from the very beginning. So is he going to try to cut a deal? He might. But the problem is Donna really is in no place to give a deal or get a deal. The state is in no place to have to give a deal. They got their cards. They got 2 aces in their hand, and they're going to wait and play this thing out. So I think that they're definitely at odds. Charlie just think about it. Donna is on her own. She doesn't have her husband. She doesn't have her daughter. She doesn't have her grandkids, and she doesn't have her son. She's in a jail cell, and now she doesn't have her best friend, lawyer, Dan, to talk to. She is all by herself. Charlie's up there in South Dakota by himself looking at a life sentence. So you got one lifeboat, and Charlie took it from his mom yesterday.
Man, I told Tim yesterday I got to see him in court because he's got a way with words. Tim Jansen, very powerfully told right there. JJEHP, right back to Tim, and I'm going to go to Katie. How long until Alex Morris, the counselor you just saw, is taken off the defense to avoid further conflict? Will this delay the case further? Do you think we're going to see that next, Tim?
Well, you saw what happened. I told you the judge was going to do an in-camera review and make sure that this wall was enacted and determine whether he was going to kick off Alex yesterday at the same time. And then he brought Dan in there to confirm separately what he did to wall off. So I think what the judge did yesterday, he said, for now, Alex can remain the lead counsel. But we don't know. The judge may change his mind. We don't know October 15th what happens if Alex says, hey, I want more money. I'm lead now. And Dan says, I'm not giving money back. And, they don't have money to hire a new lawyer and they have to get a court-appointed lawyer. So it's crazy.
Yeah. COE, can you put that last one back up for a second, please? I'm sorry. Okay. So Katie from Darlene D here. Thank you for this super chat. Katie, I'm sure Dan Rashbaum thought his good buddy Charlie Adelson would never screw over Dan and surely not Donna. Foolish. Pretty much the same question I asked Tim a short time ago. This, to me, and others who I've spoken to, seems like Charlie he didn't flip on Donna in the traditional sense where he ratted her out, but he left her, as Tim just said, out to dry. Are you stunned by this as much as I am?
I might have a little different take on it, and I'm admitting I might be completely wrong, and I'm definitely not learned like these two lawyers. But Charlie is very isolated. He's literally in close custody in another state, so his access to information is very, very limited. So he's not like us that are looking at all of these dynamics of this. And therefore, I think Charlie could have been used as a pawn in this in some way, like, influence to say, rescinding this waiver is the only thing that's helpful for your appeal. And I really wonder if Charlie even knew that him doing that was going to cause all these other dominoes to fall, including Rashbaum bolting out of the equation. I mean, I don't know that Charlie even knew these consequences. It's very complex. And so these are just questions that I'm asking. And the other thing about that in that vein, and this goes to the two lawyers here, is that why did they wait so long? I mean, this was dropped literally the first day of the trial. That seems like to quote Dan Markell, a Pearl Harbor move and manipulative in some way, not an accident or, oh, oops, we just found out. It seems very calculated. And so, how does that fit in with this? These are questions I have.
No, these are great questions. I think everyone in STS Nation is asking them, and I have to be totally transparent. I sat in court and I talked to Tim about it, and I don't know that I fully understand what I just witnessed. Katie's saying the same. So we'll continue to break it down, and hopefully I eventually get it, because to me, it's so obvious that they should have had a signed waiver that I just can't wrap my head around what happened. But to the general, Mark Davidson from Barley Hops, in reading Charlie's document, he wants all of Donna's current attorneys off the case. So do you think by the 15th, the new guy, that's the next court date, October 15th, same question asked a different way that I just asked Tim Jansen, does Alex Morris, who Tim knows well, does he stay on? Does he last as lead counsel here?
That's a great question, and I think it's an open question right now. It sounds like Morris is going to press ahead based on his comments with exploring whether or not he can get any kind of plea offer for his client, which at least in this, at least now somebody's actually paying attention to what might be in the best interest of the client. Tim, I guess, has done a lot more criminal defense than I have. I did about 2 years. I've otherwise been
a little more
in prosecuting for the state. But what Morris says on camera is just so fundamental and basic about the obvious fact that Donna's now been untethered from Charlie's defense and Rashbaum's defense, and he's now free to explore what should have been explored from the get-go, which is what's in the best interest of the clients. What legal defenses are available. Should she be pointing the finger at Charlie, which, I don't think even with a waiver, you were going to get around that. So whether or not Morris is free of all of this taint, hard to say at this point. He claims that he's been walled off. We'll see what happens. Tim raises good points about who's paying for the defense now. How's that going to work? So it's going to be very interesting to watch this play out.
Yeah. Of course, hindsight is 2020, right, Tim? But and everyone seems to uniformly, unilaterally love Judge Stephen Everett. But there's a question here from Ray of Light. If a waiver can be taken back at any time, why would the judge have ever allowed this, meaning this conflict, to continue? It meant the trial was in jeopardy of being sidetracked at any time. Does he raise a good point? Did Judge Everett drop the ball here?
You could say that. And what he is saying is absolutely true. And it could have been worse. We could have been in the middle of trial and they called Charlie to the stand, and then they go to sidebar and he's going to invoke the fifth and he's not going to waive the privilege. That would have been worse, right? We get halfway through the trial. So yes, the point of it is the judge should have seen that this could not go forward. The prosecution, as soon as they knew that they might call Charlie in rebuttal, they should have said, Judge, we have an issue. We don't think this conflict can be waived, and some conflicts can't be waived. And I think this is one of those that the bar will say could not be waived. It wasn't in the best interest of either client for this lawyer to represent. You have divided loyalties. You got information you shouldn't use. Any ethical wall is never going to be enough because he can change his mind. Now, should Alex stay on? I would think Alex would want to get off for his own reputation because he's already started with this big sack of potatoes on his back. And he had to go up there and argue this motion for Dan when Dan should have been the one that was addressing the court, not Alex. This was Dan's doing or failures. So Alex is up there trying to fix it. And we're like thinking Alex is trying to pull something when he didn't do anything but come in there and have an ethical wall. So I don't know if Alex will stay on. He's a very ethical lawyer. It might be too much fanfare, publicity, or money for him not to. Or maybe he feels like, now that I've been in, I need to help the next lawyer come in so she can get a trial quicker. That's another thing that he might do. But I'm sure he does not feel comfortable in this case.
I mean, Tim, in this country, you have a constitutional right to a speedy trial. We know that, right? So if Alex, and it seems like there's a very good chance he will remove himself from this case as well as Dan Rashbaum, although we don't know for certain, what does that do to the timetable for Donna? If he does remove himself, right now they're talking anywhere from November through March for this trial to happen. If he drops out, what's a realistic trial date?
Well, you have some lawyers, when you get first-degree murder cases, they try to waive. They waive speed. They want to go speedy trial, thinking the state won't be ready. They can't get their experts. They can't get their DNA. They can't get whatever. Sometimes that works. Sometimes it doesn't. This case, it's not going to work because the state is all ready to roll. They got everything done. They've tried this case 4 times. So I don't know what's going to happen. Do I think it was intentional? I don't. Only because watching what Dan did, what he said, I don't think it was intentional. I think it was just a lapse of experience. And he probably didn't realize that Charlie would turn on him when Charlie had an independent appellate lawyer who is divided. He has no loyalty but to Charlie. And he tells him it's not in your best interest to go along with this and waive it. So maybe his lack of experience, he didn't realize what was going to happen. And that happens. If you have lawyers that don't have a lot of experience in trial cases and multiple defendants you don't have that experience. And he didn't have an experienced lawyer with him to advise him. He was all alone, him and the Adelsons.
Tim, we were sitting in court. I'm going to get to Katie about Donna in court yesterday because it was interesting to watch her. But Tim, you and I were sitting next to Michael Ufferman, who is Charlie Adelson's appellate attorney.
Yep.
We saw his associate making an argument to the judge because he was not able to make it in time. But then he did come into court. The question from Kathy, do you think Charlie was advised by his attorney to do this at the last minute? They obviously filed the motion. I think it was Thursday or Friday.
Well, first of all, I know Michael Ufferman well. I refer all my appellate cases to him. He's a brilliant lawyer, above reproach, very ethical. He had an oral argument in Pensacola, and he was unable to get to the courthouse yesterday. But when he went and visited his client on Saturday and advised him of his options, and I think they discussed ineffective assistance of counsel, my sources, really good source, indicated that his appellate lawyer believed there's an ineffective assistance of counsel claim against Rashbaum. That is when they decided they were not going to waive it. And that's when he filed the motion the next day. He saw him on a Saturday. Charlie got there Friday. He saw him Saturday. His associate filed the motion on Monday. I don't think there was any collusion by Michael Ufferman. And in fact, he got there as soon as he can. He was going to stand firm that his client was not waiving.
Katie Cool Lady, to you, you were sitting on the other side of the gallery from me, but we were kind of looking at each other. Once this all imploded and Dan Rashbaum announced that he was removing himself, Donna openly was crying. I wouldn't say she was sobbing, but she was crying, consistent stream of tears. What did you make of that moment?
Well, she was crying as soon as we walked in from lunch. So she was already crying at that point. So I figured she was just nervous, anticipating like maybe she's going to lose Rashbaum. But now I believe that she was already told that he was going to, because their dynamic was really interesting. I mean, they were like 8 feet in front of me, and I was in a front row seat just looking at them and watching their dynamic. I mean, they're right there. And so she was crying from the jump. She was crying before he stood up. And then he did his resignation, whatever you call that. And then he came down. What was fascinating to me was the dynamics between them, because she was crying and he was incredibly animated. Like he looked like somebody that was just withholding his glee, like a kid that's just getting ready to go to Disneyland tomorrow. Like he had a total pep in his step. We saw that before lunch even. Remember that? We remarked he had like a pep in his step in the hallway, and he was very jovial, like not somebody who's worried about getting kicked off the case any minute. So I don't know, that just had an impression on me. And he was just very, like he was literally smiling in her face, inches from her face while she was crying. It was a very strange dynamic. And I did write some things down that I saw him, I heard him say, I feel bad about it. I said, he just said with a smile on his face, I said, he will drop this family like a hot potato. He is literally smiling and giggling now. He's so damn happy. Those are my notes. And then he said, I'm sorry for that. He just said, and Donna is still crying. He looked very happy and relieved, and she looked devastated.
Yeah, his outward appearance, which is sometimes different than what's going on the inside, did not match kind of the weightiness of that particular situation. It didn't appear like he realized that it was as, I guess, serious as it is. By the way, I want to mention that I spoke very briefly with Ruth on the ride back. They're obviously really disappointed. We're talking about all of us. We're all collectively disappointed because we wanted to see this move forward. Phil Markel had even been in transit when he got the news and had to return to Canada. So I just feel so badly for Phil and Ruth and Shelly, Dan's sister, that they're going through this. But this is a real life example of how and why victims suffer years after. And obviously, Katie could talk to this. We can have her speak to this in a little bit. But years after the crime, the families are in agony dealing with this. From Kevin Hornbuckle to the general, did Dan Rashbaum violate, and I'm going to play some sound for everybody, violate his ethical obligation of duty of candor to the court? So there's a duty of candor. Did he violate this, in your opinion, General?
I expect that's something that the Florida bar will be looking at. There's a lot of collateral damage here. The judge is talking about cost being imposed against the defense. I'm not exactly sure how the nuts and bolts of that are going to work. There's certainly, obviously, a heavy cost to the victim, the family of the victim in this case. In Tennessee, we have a Victims' Bill of Rights, and Rashbaum would be, I think, would have run afoul of that by not disclosing to the court at any time during these many months that he didn't even have a written waiver from his client on such a fundamental conflict. And we're not talking about a conflict here between, two co-defendants who are gang members or friends. This is family. How do you untangle that mess? It looks like he's really going to have his hands full probably with the bar. I read somewhere that he made some comments on a hot mic about he's not worried about the Constitution, but he is worried about the bar.
He better be.
Yeah. By the way, I'm glad you brought that up, General. I'm glad you brought that up, but we went back and I think the COE can load it up. We went back and listened. We did not hear that. Other content creators did hear it. If the COE is able to bring it up, I'll play it for you in a little bit. It was a hot mic at the very beginning of yesterday's hearing, and but we did not hear that. So, just trying to. I totally understand because it's been going around. But STS, we did not hear him say those words. It's possible that we missed it, but I'll play that if the COE can pull that back up. Tim Jansen, to you from Arthur Emery. What happens in a situation like this? I mean, all the attorneys in Tallahassee are obviously talking about this as well as the public, but is Dan going to have to walk into his law firm with his tail between his legs come Monday or whatever day he goes back? Before you answer that, this is what we picked up during this hot mic moment. Let's take a listen together. It is subtitled, but we did not hear some of kind of the speculation as to what others heard. So Space Coast on the West Coast does all of our audio work. He's an audiophile guy. If anyone can, except maybe the guy who enhanced Dolce Vita, he might have a little bit on Space Coast. But Space Coast did enhance it and listen to it over and over. He did not hear that, what was reported. So just wanted to play that for you, to get a sense of all this. General, to you. You're a district attorney for all intents and purposes in the great state of Tennessee. If this happened to you in court yesterday, it looked like Georgia handled it pretty well. I'll ask Tim about what really went on behind closed doors at the SAO, but what would your reaction have been yesterday?
Probably similar to Georgia's. You're prepped, you're ready to go. You've got your case together, and to have a setback like this for such a basic thing has to be frustrating at the very least. But, Georgia's been so methodical through this whole thing. She's not easily rattled. I feel bad for the victim's family here. The prosecution will go forward and they're going to do their thing. But for everybody else involved, it's really very unfortunate and something you hate to see.
Tim Jansen from Jane Kreisman here. It is clear that Charlie, a.k.a. Chuckles the Clown, she said it, not me, in case Charlie's listening, will never cooperate. He'll never cooperate. Why couldn't the prosecution just go forward without him? He'll just do this again. And I'll add to that, Georgia said, hey, we're not really planning on calling him, but we might need him depending on what testimony he gives if the defense calls him. So she was trying to sort of work with the defense in this regard. Am I right or am I wrong?
I always try to make this easy language for people.
Thank you.
Why would you go?
That's Tim's way of saying I'm dumb, but go ahead, Tim.
Okay. Why would you go into a football game without a backup quarterback? Right? You got a starting quarterback. They don't know what Donna's defense is going to be. They think it's going to be different than the double extortion. Why wouldn't you have Charlie in rebuttal or Cardinal on direct if you hear in the opening they're coming up with another defense? Why wouldn't she make him available? Now, the only reason he wouldn't be available, he couldn't be, is if he says, I'm taking the fifth. I don't care. You give me immunity. I've already got a life sentence. Go ahead and hold me in contempt. Thank you, Judge. What's for lunch? But why would she limit her case because of the defense's failure to abide by the rules? You know, there's a lot of things you do. I get a call in the morning to represent somebody. First thing I do is I call the federal prosecutor or the DEA agent and say, hey, do I have a conflict? Are any of the government's witnesses my clients? Can you let me know? Because you don't want to get in on a case. You might have a conflict. You learn that by experience. I didn't do that when I first started. I rushed and took the case, got the guy's money, had a contract. Lo and behold, 4 months later, I've got to get out. But you learn by doing that, and that's what experience is. And it looks to me like Dan doesn't have a lot of experience in this.
In fairness,
I'm giving him a credit because otherwise it was just incompetence.
Yeah, well, Dan was a very successful, never lost a case as a prosecutor. I think most of his defense work was white collar crime. This is not only a murder case, but a conspiracy case with so many different tentacles to it. So, it would be difficult for anybody, and I'm not making excuses for Dan. But, I'd also, by the way, Dan was on my show before. There's a comment here, Super Planner Girl. I'm not going to put, I want to get to this with Katie Kool-Lady in a second, but Super Planner Girl in the chat saying, Dan basically told Joel he had gotten the signatures, shaking my head. By the way, Super Planner Girl sent me a bunch of chunky chocolate bars that I love for the ride. They melted, Super Planner Girl, but I have them in the fridge, and I will eat them tonight when I get home much earlier than anticipated. So Jody Roser here, my opinion, to Katie, Charlie's going to rat on Wendy. I'm not sure what the rest of this said. Mom sat idle. I'm not sure. Ahi tuna. I'm not sure what that is. But anyway, Katie Kool-Lady, I'm starting to see a scenario. And I'm going to ask Tommy Scoville. Shout out to Super Planner Girl. I'm going to ask Tommy Scoville tomorrow because he spent many years behind bars. What's going on in Charlie's head? But do you see a scenario now where Charlie does turn around and flip on Wendy, his sister?
I've been saying that for months, 100%. I mean, he's estranged from her. He's already complaining about her on the jail calls to his mother. He did this for her. He's doing time for her. She's getting his inheritance. She's out sipping cocktails on the beach. He has one move, and it's that. And he's young, and he's looking at a landscape of not only his entire life in close custody in terrible conditions, but with a Latin King's target on his back, thanks to his attorney, Daniel Rashbaum, who helped him get both of those things. So, he has a move, and that's turning on but he has a limited window to do that. Now, I'm wondering why he had a smirk on his face in his most recent mugshot. I saw that mugshot, and I'm like, why is he smiling?
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know if the COE can pull that up too, but Charlie did have a smirk when he was booked into the Leon County Courthouse. Definitely a bit of a smirk on his face. Maybe he knew what he was up to coming in here. By the way, I spoke to Tommy Scoville. He says it's a huge deal, and Tim knows this, and I think Mark knows this, that when prisoners are moved, they're very agitated. They do not like it because their possessions are taken, and then they basically have to start over, new bunkmates, the whole deal. So that move might have aggravated Charlie. Who knows? Maybe, and this again is why we are going to have a former inmate on tomorrow to talk about how this may have impacted, Charlie's thinking going into all this. Here, I have a soundbite. So this is from Dan Rashbaum on my show. The COE might know the date. I don't have it off the top of my head. All I can tell you is months and months ago, and I'm asking him about Charlie here. By the way, Alex Morris, he has an open invite on my show. Dan Rashbaum, if you want to clear the air, you have an open invite. Of course, Georgia does, even Judge Everett, but they're not going to be able to talk. But open platform to anybody who wants to come on here and explain what just happened. Let me get to this soundbite real quick. It just moved on me. COE, what in the world is going on? You just had the Dan. Oh, here it is. Okay, here we go.
Asked whether there's a conflict now, and the answer is yes. There is a conflict. It is a waivable conflict. So with ethics lawyers and waivers by all the relevant parties, that conflict has been waived. And as a result, I now no longer represent Charlie Adelson or Harvey Adelson, but only represent Donna Adelson. So just to
I'm going to hold it right there. General, he's got to kind of eat crow now. I don't know any other way to say this. Sounded extremely confident there that he had this waiver. And again, this is months ago, probably back in March, as my guess. He obviously spoke too soon. What do you make of his comments up to there?
Well, he's claiming there's a waiver when there's not. Number one, I'm not an ethics guru. I always abide by the "what would baby Jesus do" rule to steer clear of these ethics problems. I want no part of ethical issues, and so, but he's just wrong from the get-go. I'm not even sure that it is waivable. It's a rat's nest of issues and potential conflicts. And so that this seems very naive to me, and proved to be dead wrong at great cost, to the system, for the victims and the victims' family and friends. The Justice for Dan group. So that's kind of hard to watch that video.
Yeah. By the way, we're planning to do something for Justice for Dan because we were going to do it at Hearth and Soul, which we will do when the trial comes. But we'll have something for you guys. January, it was when I interviewed Rashbaum. So this is a long time ago. This was just, I guess, less than 2 months after Charlie was convicted then, or right around the 2-month mark. So this goes all the way back, and I'm going to continue to play this out. Thank KCL is like on top of it. She and the COE are from like the same cloth, I think. Katie Cool Lady, you watched this first part of the soundbite from my show in January with Daniel Rashbaum. You were shaking your head. Why?
I just can't stand to look at the man. And this is very typical, this sort of grandiosity for no reason. He's arrogant and cocky with no substance behind it. And I would say that pertained to much of his defense of Charlie in a nutshell. But I have a question, if I could pose a question to Tim and Mark. Okay. So this is something that's been haunting me the last couple of days. So people are saying that like Judge Everett could have or should have addressed this conflict sooner. So my question is, at what point can a judge's decision or wisdom or whatever override a defendant's constitutional right to choose their representation? Like, what's the tipping point wherever because he was getting her to, you kept saying, Tim, that he keeps getting her to waive it, and he kept repeatedly asking her, at what point does it reach the straw that goes over that he says, you no longer have the right to choose your lawyer and I'm choosing for you? Obviously that was happening yesterday, but like people are saying it should have happened sooner. Like, where's the line for that?
Well, it's interesting you say that. First of all, I want to say, if I have to call the ethics hotline about representing somebody, that's a major red flag. Usually I call the ethics hotline when I need to get out of a case because my client's doing some conduct that's inappropriate, or I have a conflict that has arisen. I don't usually have to get an ethics opinion whether I can represent somebody that I move forward. If you remember, Kathy, I call you Katie, the judge was only asking her about her conflict.
True.
There was never a mention about the conflict with Charlie. No one brought Charlie up. No one brought him in to talk about the waiver of this privilege. I think they all missed it. I think Georgia missed it. I think the judge missed it. But I think, I remember Rashbaum was going on that show and he had little conditions. He didn't want anybody else on the show with him. He don't want anybody to ask him questions. I said, I'll appear. Let me ask some questions. So my question was to that ethical lawyer who gave him ethics opinions. Did you tell him that a waiver is sufficient if it's over the phone while he's in prison? Did you tell him it has to be in writing? Was it a Florida ethics lawyer? Did you did you get it notarized and signed and witnessed? So you can't say I didn't do it later. And I disagree with him that this can be waived. I think this is one that really can't be waived because the client can always change his mind. And if he did, the trial's over. So I think they all missed the ball, to tell you the truth. And I hate to say that. And I know Judge Everett is mad. And I think he feels like he relied on officers of the court to bring it to his attention. And he missed it because he had so many things going. And I think George is mad because she probably built a relationship with Dan from the last trial that she thought she could trust him. And you could tell by her demeanor, she was not happy. So she probably got egg on her face too. So, but I will tell you, they don't normally accrue cost to the defendant if they're convicted. And you saw he made sure that this continuance is based on the defense by their conduct. So there's no speedy trial issue here.
Yeah. Tim, by the way, something that stood out, and I can't honestly remember if it was Monday or Tuesday, but when Judge Everett first walked in for the morning hearing, he said, and I quote, "Slept like a baby last night." That's what he said. "I slept like a baby last night." Do you think he had a very bad night's sleep last night? He's obviously got to where he is because he's highly intelligent.
Yep.
Do you think he was beating himself up?
Well, I think he's saying that because he wasn't going to sleep like a baby that night because he knew what he was going to have to do. He was doing a lot of work. His clerks were doing a lot of work. He took that break, 2-hour break, I think, to confer with other lawyers, other judges that see what this requires. And I think he knew in the back of his mind. That's why he released those jurors from the first session, told the others to come later, because he had in his mind, he knew this train wreck was about to crash.
To the general from Mossberg mom, who very sadly told us about her husband being murdered, I think 33 years ago, she said, is there any way to lock someone into a waiver, General? I know the law is different state to state. In Tennessee, can you do that?
Not to my knowledge. Yeah, you can't lock anybody into a Miranda waiver.
No.
You can't lock anybody into a waiver of conflict. They can always, it has to be a knowing waiver, but it can also be a knowing unwaiver. Tim's right. This could have gone off the rails at any point during the trial. And given what happened before the trial, I think you could expect that it would have happened had this case gone to trial. Charlie, as Kat has said, went from being this freewheeling, wealthy, partying guy down in Miami to locked up in a cell in South Dakota. He's lost it all, and it's going to be unpredictable and unfriendly. And so, no way to lock that down.
COE, we're going to get to that side in 1 second. I want to play the rest of the Dan Rashbaum sound. There was, Tim, the comment that was up there, it's very important, actually. I was asking this myself. In this filing, basically in so many words, I don't know the actual legal wording, Charlie Adelson was saying through Michael Offerman, the appellate attorney, that he didn't approve of Donna's representation or something along those lines. He didn't want them representing her. Why on earth would he have any say in what his mother's legal representation was? How does he have that power or say over her?
I don't think I clearly understood what you were reading. You're saying that Offerman said that he did not approve of her representation, or he didn't approve of Dan's representation to the court that there was a waiver. Is that what you're asking me?
I'll be totally transparent. I have no idea, except the fact that no, I really don't. That's why I'm trying to figure it out. But go ahead, General.
I think the question was, how could Charlie control who represents Donna?
Correct. That is the question. Thank you,
Oh,
General.
okay.
So, Tim, what's the answer there, Tim?
He doesn't. Charlie has no control who represents
Okay.
Donna. All Charlie has is his own individual. He has his rights. He has his confidential communications with his lawyer, and he's got his appellate rights and a 3.850, which is ineffective. That's all he cares about. Donna can hire whoever he wants, but I'm not waiving anything. Michael Offerman is a brilliant appellate lawyer. Brilliant.
They say he's the best in the state of Florida.
I think that's correct.
Dr. Von Decay, for Tim, even with a signed agreement, we kind of talked about this, could Charlie have rescinded? Yes, correct?
That's why Dan should never have been the lawyer. Either the money was too good, his relationship was too close, or he doesn't know what he's doing. You know, you take any one of those three, he shouldn't have been the lawyer. And none of those are good.
Shout out to the Lifeboats, Tommy Scoville. He's in the chat and he's going to be on the show. 12:30. It's an early show tomorrow, p.m. Eastern time. It's going to be an interesting trio with a psychologist, a former inmate, Tommy, and a law professor, Joe Patuto. We're going to get some interesting perspective there. COE, since you have a thought about what we were just talking about, can you bring it up? And then I'll go back to Rashbaum's sound from my interview.
What is a SOT?
Sound on tape. Glad you asked that. A sound on tape. By the way, it's very important to ask that. I'll tell you a very quick story. I have a friend whose dad was in the retail business, and I worked at Macy's. I'm taking a 2-second diversion here. And everything at Macy's in college is a SKU number. You see that? You see a SKU number? You hear that term? Does anyone know what it means? I did not know what it meant, and I remember asking.
Everyone knows.
I remember asking Mr. Littman, "What does SKU mean?" And I never knew, and I never will forget. A stock keeping unit. That's what it stands for. So I'm glad you asked what a SOT is. Sound on tape. COE, do we have that sound bite?
I think everyone knew that the conflict existed, or the potential of the conflict. There were waivers in place that seemingly resolved the conflict issue. But as is anyone's right in that circumstance, their consent or their permission was revoked. And as a result, that brought a termination to that game plan, if you will, and necessitated a different one. And that's the reason.
So, Tim, maybe there was a Chinese wall, because he seems to not, be 100% clear and that it was rescinded. Again, I mean, it sounds like they were just thrown off, not expecting this, but coupled with the fact that they never had it signed, correct? But what do you make of that comment from Alex?
Well, I think Alex is brought in at the end. The patient's already been operated on, and it's in recovery, and now you got him giving information about what took place during the operation. He doesn't know. He's only relying on what was told to him. He's a press person right there. He wasn't present when they allegedly got this waiver. He wasn't on board in December. He certainly wasn't on board when she got arrested and there was a decision to hire Dan. And he wasn't present when Dan did that crazy press conference where he tried to get some good media for Donna. So I don't blame Alex. I'm just curious to see if Alex is going to go forward and stay on the case. I want to see if that happens.
Well, I want to see that too. By the way, Wendy, you've got a platform here. You want to come on and explain what's been going on for the last 10 years. I'll interview you if you are here lurking. Let me get back. So this is a show from January where I interviewed Dan Rashbaum, the now no longer attorney of Donna Adelson and the one-time attorney of Charlie Adelson. Here's this soundbite. It might start from the beginning. I don't know. Let's take a listen.
Clear when you say, were you fearful that there was a conflict? There is a conflict. It just happens to be a waivable conflict that has been waived by everyone.
So Harvey, Donna, Charlie all had to sign something agreeing to allow you to be Donna's attorney solely.
Correct. And they had to do so. The most prudent way to do it is with an independent counsel advising them so that I'm not part of that decision-making.
Tim Jansen, this is interesting. I hadn't listened to this, but let's play this back real quick because he says he had a signed waiver. That's very important. I'll pick it up. Right
Yeah,
here.
go back. I want to hear that.
So just to be clear, when you say, were you fearful that there was a conflict? There is a conflict. It just happens to be a waivable conflict that has been waived by everyone.
So Harvey, Donna, Charlie all had to sign something agreeing to allow you to be Donna's attorney solely.
Correct. And they had to do so. The most prudent way to do it is with an independent counsel advising them, so that I'm not part of that decision making.
So
You
I
asked
asked
whether
them.
there's a conflict now.
I asked him flat out, was it signed? Lo and behold, and this is the biggest issue going on right now. Guess I got lucky there. But he said, you heard him say yes. I said, was it signed? Donna, Harvey, I think I said Wendy, or I don't know the three that I mentioned. But anyway, it was Donna and Charlie for sure. And he said it was signed. It was never signed. Tim?
Well, either he didn't listen to you carefully before he answered, or he was just going to give his canned response. And we said the prudent way. Well, there is no prudent way. There's only the right way and there's the wrong way. And the right way, it's in writing. Now, he did say that I talked to him on the phone and there was a lawyer present. Now, is that what he's calling independent? A lawyer sitting there while he's conversing? That doesn't sound like it's an independent. Just like he, in court the other day, brought in this lawyer for 30 minutes to talk to her to see if she could get independent consultation on whether to go forward. And this was the same person that was going to be hired to do the cross-examination. So where was his bias? You don't think he was leaning towards her waiving it so he can get hired? No, you get an independent, someone who's not involved with it. Independent, completely outside. They didn't do that at any stages.
Well, not to mention, we were in there in court when Judge Everett asked her, have you received independent counsel on this, about this? And she said no, right there in court. So he's a liar. Yeah. Dan Rashbaum is a liar. I mean, he's on your show, Joel, with every opportunity to clear that up, or he could say we're working on it or something, but he initiated that statement about the independent third-party counsel, and he was fabricating that. He is not an ethical person, and I hope he gets disbarred.
Strong statement from Katie Cool Lady. Yeah, I mean, everyone's entitled to their opinion.
It's my opinion. I'm a layperson, but
yeah,
he's created a lot of problems.
So someone said they were multitasking and looked up and said, was that Rashbaum? So this is actually not because it's me, but it's from January. Bill Davis, I want to replay that is my point. But Bill Davis, always in the chat. Tim, being that this conflict is so fundamental, is this something that Rashbaum could be disbarred? Right on Katie Cool Lady's comment. Is it severe enough to be disbarred?
Well, I will tell you, this is such a fundamental rule that the bar, if a complaint is filed, will find his response is not sufficient, not to the level of degree. Whether they punish him with a verbal reprimand, public reprimand, I would think they certainly would require him to take ethics courses, maybe be under the tutelage of an experienced lawyer about ethics. This is clearly fundamental violation of the standards of the bar and the rules. I mean, the lawyer, Offerman, even cited the rules in there, right? And then when poor Alex got up there, the judge cited the case to him, and poor Alex had to acquiesce that, no, we didn't comply with the rules, and we're not in comport with them. And poor Alex is trying to save the ship, and it should have been Dan. And I found out later that Dan was going to finally swallow the sword, and he should have done that at the beginning. That would have helped him before the bar. He should have said, I made a mistake. I got too close to these people. I thought it was done. My mistake. I'll never. But it doesn't sound like that. It sounds like he's always got an excuse.
Tim, does it sound like it was the motivation? And man, I know we're beating up on Dan Rashbaum, and Katie obviously feels he deserves it. I just, I try to give people the benefit of the doubt. He's got a family, kids to feed, the whole thing. So being disbarred would really hurt him. And I guess I don't wish horrible things on, I don't know, most people, maybe on a few, but not Dan, I don't think. there was a bigger point I was getting to, but got lost in the moment there. Coffee cake here to Tim, and I'm going to go back. I want to replay that sound. Why do they have the same judge? You know what? Let me let the general answer this one.
Yeah, go ahead.
I do not understand this. General, same thing. I mean, you've got the same judge from Charlie's trial. Should there be a new, more, I guess, I don't want to say impartial, but someone who's just coming in fresh?
I don't know how they assign cases in that district. I'm sure Tim does, but the judge is presumed to be impartial. He's an umpire. He calls balls and strikes. There's no reason to believe he has any vested interest in the outcome of the case one way or the other. And keeping him on the case or assigning this case to him, however that works, he's familiar with it. He knows the landscape. He knows the potholes. He's very, very familiar with it. He's going to arguably be more efficient, maybe able to take the case to trial quicker. I see every reason for it to remain with him, and I don't see any reason why it would be taken away or reassigned.
Yeah, it's assigned by divisions, and that the whole case, we're in that same division. Judge Everett's the most experienced criminal judge in that division. And for any defendant, he's probably one of the best judges you want to try a case before. He's fair to both sides. And so he doesn't browbeat lawyers, as you can tell. I will tell you, if Judge Hankinson would have been the judge on this case, I think Dan would have been held in contempt. And the lashing that he would have gotten in public would have been, he would not have been happy. He would not have been smiling when he left that courtroom.
From Sharon, and I promise I'm going to go back and play this sound from January. Does anyone remember the name of the lawyer Donna met with? That was Adam Commissar, right? So, Tim,
yes.
Who is he? And just explain. They needed basically an independent third-party attorney to advise Donna about whether she should waive her right or not, what she wanted to, because she wanted to move ahead with the trial. Who is he? What was the primary purpose for him being there?
Well, in all due fairness, he used to work in my office, and I do not want to make any comments regarding him at this point.
General, if you I appreciate that, Tim. But General, they brought in this third-party attorney to basically advise Donna. Was that just for the judge to dot his I's and cross his T's in case of some sort of appeal from Donna, assuming that the trial would have moved ahead, assuming Donna would have waived her rights, and assuming Charlie would have waived his rights?
That's what it sounds like to me. And of course, the judge commented on a very important issue here, and that is an appeal and not trying this case twice. That is something that everybody that's certainly the state has a very big interest in preserving their record here and making sure. And we do this all the time with some defense lawyers who are not so competent. We try to monitor them and protect our case from them on occasion. I mean, sometimes you just have to do that. And the judge, of course, is also sensitive to not trying the case twice. So that might have been an attempt to just, try to help unravel this rat's nest. I also wanted to make the comment that that video you played of Dan on your show is not going to be helpful to him with the bar. I mean, he starts off in response to your comment with this very dismissive reaction. He literally waves it off and says, well, yeah, there's a conflict, but it just happens to be a waivable conflict. And they all met and got together and yada, yada, yada. And he kind of just rolls right over it as if, there's nothing to see here, right? Yeah, everybody just move on. Well, wow. How wrong was that? I know Katie's saying it's worse than wrong. It's,
And the interview gets worse from there on out.
Yeah.
Since we're talking about it, I'm going to play it from the beginning, and then we'll just go around the horn and get another thought.
Joel,
on
I don't want to interrupt you, Joel, but let me say this, Mark.
Yeah.
Florida's a really big state, really big state. And the conduct of lawyers in Miami, what they get away with is completely different than they get away with in Tallahassee. Okay.
I get that.
And I've been down to Miami and I've seen lawyers, how they act and how they treat the bar rules like suggestions. You know, it's like the Italians. Speed signs are mere suggestions in Italy, right? In Tallahassee, the bar is here. We see the bar. We know the ramifications, and we have a very collegial with the judges. We adhere to them. And unfortunately for Dan, you know, we have a governor that's very Republican. He's appointed very conservative justices to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is the ultimate authority on discipline. We have had bar counsel recommend discipline that the Supreme Court has said is not harsh enough. So it's changing. Lawyers are now should be put on notice. Violations will not be tolerated by this Supreme Court. Dan should be worried about that.
Yes.
Wow. With that said, let's play this again. This is an interview I did with Dan Rashbaum back in January, asking him about what imploded this trial, which is a signed waiver from Charlie Adelson.
Answer is yes. There is a conflict. You asked whether there's a conflict now, and the answer is yes. There is a conflict. It is a waivable conflict. So with ethics, lawyers, and waivers by all the relevant parties, that conflict has been waived. And as a result, I now no longer represent Charlie Adelson or Harvey Adelson, but only represent Donna Adelson. So just to be clear, when you say, were you fearful that there was a conflict? There is a conflict. It just happens to be a waivable conflict that has been waived by everyone.
So Harvey, Donna, Charlie all had to sign something agreeing to allow you to be Donna's attorney solely.
Correct. And they had to do so. The most prudent way to do it is with an independent counsel advising them, so that I'm not part of that decision making.
Anyone want to jump in? Katie's shaking her head again. Katie, I mean, it's kind of incredible. It was not my intention to, have this become relevant again, but it has. But even a written waiver can be correct. That is correct, unless Tim says otherwise or the general says otherwise. But Katie, shaking your head again.
Well, again, he is initiating that comment about the third party, and he is lying. I mean, we saw Donna stand up in court and say to Judge Everett that she never met with a third party, which is why Judge Everett arranged for that day. So, I mean, he's just fabricating things. He's just making things up. And I have a hashtag for him on my channel, #BadInstincts, because it shows up everywhere with him. Another example, like his instinct was to go on your show. His instinct was to lie on your show about something. And he just offered that. He wasn't even responding to your question. I mean, I think that's the tip of the iceberg with Dan Rashbaum. I think they're going to find a whole bunch of other bald-faced lies that have affected all kinds of things with him once they start digging. I think he's in a heap of trouble, and I think he should be. And I think he knows, which is why he's so relieved and why he was running away as soon as, I'm out of here, boom, and he looked very gleeful to me to get out from Donna. And, I think he's trouble. And I think he's going to catch up with him.
Tim Jansen, before you answer this, COE, do we have the soundbite of Alex Morris making that comment, which caught a lot of people's attention about a possible plea deal? Because the question here, any chance of a plea while Charlie is still in Florida? When is he going back? COE, do we have that sound? Please, pretty please.
No, I think that it's going to open up opportunities as it relates to negotiations. I think that it opens up pathways to and exploring different defenses that may not have been previously available. I think that it makes the situation potentially easier and in the best interest of both Mr. Adelson and Mrs. Adelson in terms of having lawyers advocate for them.
Tim Jansen, what is he saying? If you read between the lines, by the way, Michael says, I'll pull this up for a second before you answer that. I am not a subscriber to STS, but STS stands up for Rashi too much. He has a family to feed. Yeah. In the $1 Million Mansion. By the way, there's a thing going around that Dan Rashbaum did just buy a home, I think for $1.8 million in South Florida. Everyone, can buy a home, but in no way am I defending his actions. I'm just saying, I think that I try to be empathetic to all sides and give them the benefit of the doubt. And that's it. That's all I'm going to say about that. But Tim Jansen, what was Alex Morris just saying there?
And the question was he talking to the community or was he talking to Georgia and Jack Campbell? Listen, there's a new sheriff in town. We're open to different things. We're open to plea negotiations, and we might have a different defense strategies now that the friend, family, lawyer is not involved. Business is open. Come see me. And they know Alex. They trust Alex. You've been here long enough. You know you have to have reputation or you're not going to do very well. You lie to a prosecutor one time, your reputation is done. I tell my associates, never lie to a prosecutor. It's not worth one case. You got to build up trust. Same with the prosecutor. Prosecutor lies to me, I'll never trust him again, and I'll never work with him again. But it works both ways. And when you build that relationship, you have that relationship and you can work deals and get things resolved because there's a level of trust. There was no trust with any of the lawyers in South Florida.
By the way, let's show this. The question, Katie, this one's for you, and we'll go to Tim. Tim had an interesting take. Was Donna crying purely because she's so attached to Dan Rashbaum, or maybe financial reasons, or both? Now let's take a look at this. By the way, huge shout out to the COE. These things don't just appear. She's been going through a lot of video today and pulling these, and we were talking the whole ride from Tallahassee. Same to Steve Cohen for booking the fantastic guest, Space Coast on the West Coast, and the best mods in the business. This is Donna yesterday. That is, by the way, is Adam Commissar, the third-party attorney there. This is just some video. This, I think, she begins to cry. Katie, there's no sound here, so Katie, what are we seeing here? You were in there as was I.
Well, I was directly behind them about 6 steps. So if I had walked forward about 6 steps, so I could see Daniel's face as well as the side of her face. What you're looking at the back of his head here, most of the time he was smiling. So look at her, she's crushed, and he's looking at her like trying to reassure her, and he's being jovial, smiling, like upbeat, like, it's going to be all right. We'll get another puppy, and it was disturbing. It was really disturbing to witness.
So Joel, I made the silly comment to you, and I said to you while we're sitting there, and this is the breakup. We all had the breakups, right? This was the breakup. And as I was leaving the courtroom, a woman comes up to me. She goes, "Oh, I met you at one of these events." He goes, "I was in the elevator with Dan, and he was saying she's going to flip her shit when I tell her I'm withdrawing." And he's saying that in the elevator. He's saying that in the elevator before he's told her in front of people in the elevator. He didn't know who they are. She had no idea.
I'm sorry, Tim. Who did he say that to in the elevator?
Same person we've been talking about.
He's to the person we're talking to, the woman. I don't know her name, but she was not very nice. Introduced herself, and she pulled me aside and said he just said this in the elevator, and he hasn't even told her yet, and it's so wrong for him to do that. That she's going to flip her shit. She doesn't know I'm withdrawing.
Katie, you heard that. I'm sorry, Katie. You heard that also, and you actually spoke to this woman.
She approached me right before I walked in the courtroom, and
now,
she
she's
also
a trial
said,
watcher, and she came up and told you that Dan Rashbaum said this. I just want to be very clear about how this information came out because there is hearsay. But Tim heard it, Katie heard it. Katie, what did you hear?
Same thing, that she's going to be very upset, and something along the lines of, "I'm going to be really relieved when this burden is lifted off my shoulders." I took notes on it. I was sitting in the courtroom when she told me, and I took notes on it. Exactly what she said.
General, I don't want to drag you into the mud here, but if this is true, that Dan made this proclamation in an elevator prior to Donna herself knowing, is that a problem for him?
Well, let me first say, y'all are making me want to come down to Tallahassee.
Yeah. Hey, maybe you can take the case.
No, thank you.
You'd love it down here. We're nice people up here.
Very
Well,
nice.
your
Very
your
nice.
comments to me about the bar remind me of our situation. You know, we're next door to Memphis, Tennessee, which is a big city bar, but we're out in the country. And our bar is very collegial, and we know our judges well. And so we're in a situation kind of similar to Tallahassee. But to Joel's question, yeah, possibly so. I mean, there are witnesses to this statement. He seems to be indifferent to some degree to her situation and how this is going to impact her. And he's talking about a really sensitive matter and leaking information about his legal representation to other people on an elevator, you know. And this is now we're talking about it. This is out in the public arena. So sure, it could potentially be an issue.
I can read you my notes. This is what I wrote contemporaneously in the courtroom.
Please, Katie. Look, by the way, I'm just going to address this because people are now yelling at me that I said that. I'm a human, right? I don't want Dan Rashbaum to not be able to feed his children. I'm not saying that what he did, we don't know if it was intentional or not. He's obviously going to be investigated. They're going to look at this, and I'm not condoning what he did, but I have 3 kids, and you know, I went through a tough time myself when I left news, so I can relate, and that's the only point I'm trying to make. Go ahead, Katie.
No, this is what I wrote. I mean, literally, as I'm walking in the courtroom, this woman flags me down, and she said she was very credible to me. She was very alarmed by this. She said she just rode up with him and his team, and I said, just passed to me, overheard in the elevator by a trial watcher, Rashbaum speaking out loud in front of her that he hopes to get tossed to, quote, release the burden off his shoulders. Well, he was already planning on resigning.
Yeah, Tim, how should this, if this is true, which it is being told to multiple people, how should Dan have handled this?
Well, everybody does things differently. We all know Dan had a burden, right? But I'm not going to give him any sympathy. He jumped into the fire. He wanted this burden. He collected the money. He got the publicity. He was doing press things. And so with that prestige and money comes responsibility, and he owed it to her. He owed it to her family to keep his comments to himself. He shouldn't have said it in an elevator. He should have conveyed them to her. He should have discussed this with her privately before the hearing, so she had an idea this might be coming. It looks like she was shell-shocked and had no idea. That's not how you communicate with your client. You have to have communication with your client, and this was a big communication that was not done, apparently.
Yeah, Katie, I mean, looking at her right here, do you think she was also kind of wounded by the fact that it was her own son who created this situation? It's obvious she wants to be out. She in her mind thinks she's going to be free, right? So she wanted this trial to happen as quickly as possible. Now it's her son that essentially screwed her over, pardon my French. Do you think that's part of the reason we see this emotion?
I don't know if she's processing it that far out, because she's been so attached to Daniel Rashbaum ever since Charlie was arrested. This is a number of years now. And when you listen to her on the jail calls, she is very, very attached to him and references him constantly and talks about how perfect he is and how he did everything perfectly and made no mistakes through the whole trial. And, really believed that, the only reason he made no mistakes and the only reason Charlie was convicted is because the Tallahassee jury that he didn't pick. So I would imagine she's just transferred that right over to him, and the same delusional thinking that he's going to just correct the problem of picking a better jury and have her exonerated. And he fed that in all of them. You can tell by the way they talk. He fed that delusional thinking, which is very bizarre to me. I mean, when he could just say, it's a strong case, we're going to do our best, and instead, like, you're going home, passing Charlie notes, we're going to win this. I mean, nobody thought Charlie had a chance of winning this. And so I think he was probably doing the same thing with Donna. And he's like a really bad boyfriend that's, the breakup analogy is perfect because he's like luring her in and then all of a sudden just ghosts her in the courtroom. I see ya. And he was so gleeful about it. He was just, even when you see him walk back in that clip, back to he's got this little bounce in his step and supposedly has some knee problem. It was just like he was sort of buoyant. He was.
Hang on one sec, Katie. Hang on. Phil Markel has entered the chat. One of the nicest people you will ever meet. I've become close with Phil. I like the hat in that picture. Hi, he says, very disturbing. Why is everyone worried that the Adelsons don't have money for new lawyers? They have lots of properties. They do have something like 40 LLCs. They have multiple rental units. I'm talking, I don't want to say slumlord, but close to that, but where they have a lot of properties. They do have money. They do have means. Tim, do you want to address Phil's comment here, which is a very poignant one?
Well, I don't know their financial situation, but we know Harvey's pretty tight. He was trying to get money back from Vietnam when, you're not getting money back. The son was driving a Ferrari around there. They were willing to pay $1 million to have him give up let the daughter move down to Miami, which obviously sends a signal, right? They believe that they can buy people. They believe that they get what they want through wealth. And so, yeah, it's disturbing. And do they have money? Probably do. I would bet Phil knows. He guaranteed he will know what the assets they have. And it's just troubling that the way this whole representation that occurred. Think about it. Dan was someone else's lawyer, then another lawyer, then someone else's lawyer, then somebody else. All these people were all related in a circle of lawyers. And how many lawyers are there in Miami? There has to be thousands of them. But you got 3 or 4 lawyers that represented all these people 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Tim, this begs the question. On those text messages, we see Harvey Adelson speaking to Scott Radius, who helped Charlie get a place in Vietnam, and he's asking for money back. So this begs the question. Dan clears, his hands, washes his hands of this. Is Harvey going to be calling Dan Rashbaum saying, we want a refund, our $1 million or whatever it was that they paid up front? How does that play out now?
Well, here's the deal. It depends on the contract. If the retainer agreement is an hourly fee, then all those hours that he did are earned. If it's a flat fee, if there is an ethical conflict, then you have to withdraw. And it's a basis of your conduct that you have to withdraw. A reasonable amount of money will have to be returned to the client. Now, normally you have to go to the bar, but I don't know if Donna's going to, but Harvey can go to the bar and file a complaint and say, yeah, we want money back because, this conflict should not have arisen. We didn't know about it. We paid him this money for a trial. We're not getting a trial. And now we're going to have to hire someone else to do this trial. And it sounds like Harvey may have money, but he's a little tight with the wallet, if you know what I mean. So he might want to go and see and Dan, maybe he'll give some money back. Maybe he will feel that what he did was wrong and give some money back.
My heart, I got to say, really hurts for Ruth, Phil, and Shelly here. COE, I think this interesting question, General, while we're getting the sound, I think there's one more sound bite from Alex Morris, but if we can answer this in the meantime from Reese's mom. Love Reese's peanut butter. I might get Reese's peanut butter cups tonight to treat myself. Asking again to the General, might this be favorable for Charlie's appeal, all that just transpired? Can they now say that, well, Dan Rashbaum said he had this waiver. He never had this waiver. It was ineffective assistance of counsel. Where does this leave Charlie with the appellate lane that he's trying to go down?
Yeah, I did appellate work for over 10 years, and I don't really see how this is germane or relevant to an appeal of whether or not, there was a reversible error in his trial, or whether there was any due process violation or sufficiency of the evidence or error in the trial court's rulings. The appeal should be relevant and focused on the proof at trial, the conviction. Post conviction's a different matter, but he's got to appeal. He's got to file, I believe in Florida, a direct appeal of his conviction and sentence. This is really relevant to Donna's trial. Obviously, terribly relevant to the victim's family, and I feel terrible for them. But as far as his appeal of his conviction and sentence, and Tim, correct me if you think I'm wrong, but I don't see how it really plays into the appeal of his conviction.
Oh, I agree. The ineffective assistance of counsel is a post-conviction.
Yeah.
It's going to be ineffective. He wants to get a new trial, and it's a high standard to get a new trial.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what they have, but I'm sure his appellate lawyer also does post-conviction relief stuff. So from my sources, that's the reason Charlie decided not to waive the privilege, because he feels he has an ineffective assistance claim that's valid.
Of course.
So there was an interesting article that I was directed to today, despite the 8+ hour drive. I can hear McCarm saying, "Don't say that again. Don't tell them how long the drive was. Just do the show." But this is from Florida Politics, Tim, and you know it, the capital city, Tallahassee. The publication is Florida Politics. I'm going to read something here. On TV, Tim Jansen, it may be easier to cast one lawyer for all members of a crime family across episodes to build continuity and allow fans to benefit from familiar characters. But in real life, it just doesn't happen and shouldn't, unless you're Florida defense attorney Daniel Rashbaum, who took up the flag, collected the fees, and has now fallen on that predictable sword in his representation of multiple members of a family accused, and in one case convicted, of murdering FSU law professor Dan Markel. Is this a salient point on the part of Florida Politics, kind of making the analogy of a mob lawyer who should have known better?
Yeah. They say you can build your reputation up over a career of years. You can destroy it in one day. I don't know if Dan saw the bright lights, like the person that goes into a bar and gets on the stage and starts dancing at the bright lights, and then halfway or afterwards realize what a fiasco that was, and how he continued to put himself in the bright lights, and that he's going to end with a very damaging end to his career, not to his career, but to his reputation. I don't think he could come to Tallahassee and represent anybody again in this courthouse. I don't think the state attorney would trust him again. And I don't think the judges talk to each other. Judges know who they can trust. And they know when you can trust a lawyer, right? When one lawyer does something and says something wrong, and that judge finds out you were wrong and misled him, that judge will never trust him again. And none of the judges in that circuit will trust him again. If you, on the other hand, tell the judge, I think I made a mistake, or Judge, you're right, Judge, I'm wrong, you get credibility, and you build a reputation. Same way you get your reputation with the prosecutors. If you build up a reputation, they'll trust your words, they'll trust you, and you get things done. And it's not, I don't know why he did what he did. I hope it wasn't for greed. I hope it wasn't for publicity. And I hope it was because maybe he was too close and he made bad decisions with his mama client, Donna. I hope that's the reason, because the other reasons are just bad.
Michael Dominguez to the General. My theory is that Dan's partners, he's with a firm out of Fort Lauderdale, Miami. They have multiple offices. Is that Dan's partners ordered Dan to withdraw to avoid a second big loss and the resultant harm to the firm's reputation, hence the fiasco. Do you think there's any credence to something like this? Do you think the firm would step in? They're a firm, but they also work independently. I'm not sure that this is true. General, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't know the nature of that law firm and how they're set up. That seems like probably a pretty secondary issue to me, the reputation of the firm itself. And I think this is really more on Dan than anything else. and his reputation is the one that's really going to suffer. I think I couldn't tell you who the other partners in the firm are. So, so that's kind of my thinking on that.
Yeah. Now to the kind of the juicy part, and we'll go a few more minutes because this is a big night. And thanks to the guests, thanks to everyone watching. By the way, not going to say if you enjoy it because someone told me that's probably a bad word, but if you appreciate the content and the best guests tonight and the mods and Space Coast and the COE and the production value, please subscribe and please like the program, and please, most importantly, share it with friends. We're going to stay on this story, obviously, for the foreseeable future, where we're obviously going to pivot to some other stories, but we're going to keep this. This is our original story that we began with. Katie Cool Lady, to the juicy part here. There've been and these are rumblings. This is speculation, and there's been talk that there is new evidence against or possibly incriminating Harvey Adelson and also potentially Wendy. Do you think, as the non-lawyer here, that we could possibly see, also keeping in mind that Alex Morris just made comments about possible plea deals, do you think we could see a real October surprise with a possible arrest of Harvey and Wendy, Harvey or Wendy, or neither? What do you think?
Well, I just said yesterday, whatever, on one of my shows that I have a feeling we're going to look back on what happened. Was it yesterday? Was that whenever that was? Right? We're going to look back at what happened in the courtroom when he resigned and all the stuff, and we're going to be like, oh, that set this in motion. If not for that, this wouldn't have happened. And now we're in a better place with getting more of these Adelsons. Donna's a sure thing. She is. And, I'm sure that Morris, if he stays on, is going to be an adequate defense attorney. She will be convicted. Donna Adelson is never getting out of incarceration, ever. I think that's a given. And to Phil, my heart goes out to you, Phil. And even though I've been kind of ripping on Rashbaum, I have zero sympathy for Donna. I mean, she's sitting there crying. I'm pointing it out, but that doesn't evoke any sympathy in me whatsoever. She may be sort of victimized by her attorney, but she's not the victim in this case whatsoever. I mean, she deserves whatever she gets. She's dumb. She picked him. She trusts the wrong person, and she deserves what she gets. So I don't know, but
I'm with Katie. I'm with Katie on that one. Yeah,
there could be there is a giant reset going on right now, and Rashbaum being out is a major game changer because clear eyes are going to come in and look at the remaining Adelsons, the remaining three. Well, Donna's the foregone conclusion, but the remaining two that are still on the loose, and it gives a pause and gives everybody an opportunity to think. I mean, there's two people that can flip on Wendy right now. And I'm sure the prosecution's office would really like to get her. I would really like to see them get her. So, I mean, it feels like this moment is ripe with opportunity. And I think we're going to look back on what just happened and think, oh, if not for that, this wouldn't have happened. I'm predicting that right now.
Wow. Tim, to you from Rachel, can Rashbaum talk with Donna's new lawyer now about this case? Is he allowed to confer with Alex Morris?
He probably shouldn't, but seeing Daniel's conduct, I don't know if he's going to put his finger on that hot stove again. We're trying to build a wall. You don't go back and try to tear down the wall just because you want to see how she's doing. As far as Wendy, the state needs Wendy for Donna, okay? They're not going to indict Wendy, make her a co-defendant that makes her unavailable to be a witness for the state because they can't force a defendant to take the stand. So they're not going to do anything with Wendy until after Donna's trial. If they do anything, I don't know. But I'm just saying that nothing's going to happen to Wendy until Donna's case is resolved by a plea or a trial.
This is Jared Ross. I'm just reading this for the first time. Phil, no one should give a rat's what about the Adelsons having any money for no lawyers. They committed a crime and they need to pay for it, both financially and through the criminal justice system. Thank you, Jared, for that. Watching from a train in Japan. Got Donuts as a character. I met her in Toronto. take a picture, got donuts, and send it to surviveandsurvivor@gmail. Donna's to blame. That's why the court is going to bill her. They're going to bill her a hell of a lot of money. So, and she, is going to be responsible on the hook for that. I think we have one last soundbite from Alex Morris, and then I promise we will start to wrap it. COE, roll the tape, as Warner Wolf used to say.
Warner Wolf.
A stressful day for Mrs. Adelson, no doubt about that. For lawyers, these things happen, and there are legal arguments that have to be made, and it's part of our job, of course. But a legal issue resolved, and on to the next challenge.
Tim, what is he saying here? I don't know what was resolved there.
Well, the issue that was the time bomb was resolved. That he had to go. He was forced to run up the hill. Right? He made him run up the hill before the judge. He's happy that's over. Now he's going to start clean. He's not going to have these kind of issues. He won't do that. It's just so frustrating to watch this and see what's happening and know it shouldn't be happening and not be able to tell people this is not how it's supposed to be done. That's not how trials operate. That's not how lawyers are supposed to operate. And that's not how the ethics is. But I've tried to give analogy to tell people how it should be done, but it doesn't mean people do it the right way. And those that don't do it the right way don't stay in business very long. Their clients don't do very well, and it follows them.
By the way, Steve Cohn would have corrected me. I knew it the second I said it. It was, let's go to the videotape. Warner Wolf, famous sportscaster out of New York City. Me, Moan, and myself grew up with the great Warner Wolf. I think he's still with us, by the way. What a great name. Yes, Warner Wolf said, let's go to the videotape. Cliff, by the way, this is the photo of the Maestro. Has the Maestro gone rogue? This is something that we are going to examine tomorrow. Has the Maestro gone rogue? You see the smirk. This was his booking photo from the Leon County Jail. I got to say, he looks okay. The hair is growing out. He's got the scruff, but he doesn't look, in utter despair here. But we said that about Donna, and then, day to day that changed. But we're going to pose this question with a former inmate, a psychologist, hopefully Dr. Joni Johnston, and Joe Patuto, the law professor. One last thing, and then I promise final thoughts. Lest you think I was making it up, look at this. Wow, is this a sign from above? We are here in front of the Leon County Courthouse. Katie Kool-Lady, Steve Cohn, we just left court.
You're calling us geeks?
Geek Squad!
We're not geeks.
How crazy is that? Katie Kool-Lady, is that a sign from above?
That's some sort of a sign.
Yeah.
Maybe Wendy's in the vicinity.
This is the court right here, and the Geek Squad right there. I think Jared Ross thought I was making that up, so I've got the videotape to prove it. Wow. I'm still trying to process everything that happened. We are going to stay on this story. We're going to do a bunch of different angles the next couple of days. I, myself, have a weird gut feeling that something big is going to happen in the coming days or weeks before this goes to trial. What exactly? I don't know. Could it be Harvey? Maybe. Could it be Wendy? Maybe. Could it be both? Maybe. I don't know. But I think it's not going to be quiet until, possibly a year from now or this spring. Something's going to go down. That's my hunch. And you can play back this videotape if I am wrong about that. Katie Kool-Lady, she is a victim's advocate. Her own sister devastatingly was murdered. She's gone through the process dealing with the perpetrators trying to appeal the case for decades. So she knows what this is like firsthand. I got a feeling too, Joel. Katie, just your final thoughts. Take it wherever you would like.
My final thoughts are with the Markells. This, no matter how much resilience you've built up over the years, which they've, had to build up resilience because of survival, it's tough. I've been there. It's tough. you put all of your energy and preparation and everything to jump back in there once again and to have the bottom fall out again. It's not the first time that's happened to them, but they're there again. And they have been dealing with this for a very, very long time. And so my heart is just with them today, and we'll be continuing to be with them. And I'll be back here for the next proceedings and every other one going forward. I'll drive back to Tallahassee every single time. I love this town, so no problem.
Katie, let me ask you a question. A lot of people said, wow, Wendy must be so thrilled with what happened. She bought more time. If it was me, and I'm not saying she thinks the way I do, because I think she thinks much differently, I would be 10 times more anxious, because now it's like, I don't know what's coming. I have no idea what's coming. Do you think she thinks that way, or she thinks, oh, I dodged a bullet?
The best way to answer that, Joel, is that you are a normal, empathetic person who has a range of, you particularly have a wide range of emotional responses to things. Sociopaths do not. Sociopaths do not feel fear in the same way that the rest of us do. And so they could be confronted with something that would be terrifying to you and be gliding right through it easily. And make of that what you will.
The general, Mark Davidson, a district attorney in the great state of Tennessee, really insightful. Everyone loves the Southern twang, as do I, Mark Davidson. From Dreamscape, this is an interesting question, and then your final thoughts. Will Dan Rashbaum's work product, all the questions, all these things that he has been doing over the past nearly year, will it be provided to Donna's new attorneys? If so, how would Dan's inside knowledge of Charlie's case be separated? That's a really interesting question. Is he allowed to give the material over to whoever takes us over?
I would think not. I could be wrong on that. I've never encountered a situation like this one before, thank goodness. But this is unfortunate. I certainly echo Katie's remarks. Your heart goes out to the Markells, but this could have been worse. I think it is correct to say that a problem has been overcome. Morris, for his part, and Tim knows him well, obviously, seems to be straightforward. Seems to be a straight shooter, just from what I've seen. It has already, taken the right approach. That look, this is about the client. This is about the client's best interest. And I know people don't like to hear that, but we have a Bill of Rights, and defendants do have rights. And in order to convict murderers, we have to go through that process. And so, I'd like to sound a note of optimism here. That the justice train will keep moving forward. There are better days ahead of the last few, and so they're going to get this right. And I'm looking forward to the prosecution getting back in court.
Finally, famed Tallahassee attorney R. Timothy Jansen, O-U-R and the letter R, both. Tim, always a great host up in Tallahassee, again, treating us to dinner last night. Thank you for that, Tim. Your final thoughts as we say goodbye to this show in a moment.
Kathy didn't mention our happy hour Sunday, right? Does anybody wants to come to our happy hour that we're having in Tallahassee?
Katie?
Yeah, yes, it's 6:00 this Sunday. We're going to be having like a meet and greet at what's the place? Tell me again, Tim.
Market Street Lounge.
Is it Market Square?
Market Square Lounge, right?
Market Square. Okay. Market Square Lounge, 6:00. Tim's going to be there. I put a call out to Stephen Webster and Louis Baptiste and, people that are, we'll see who feels comfortable showing up, but there's a lot of trial watchers in the area. And so we can kind of decompress together and continue obsessing, detoxing, because we all fell off a cliff, and so we're still sort of recovering. So we'll get together and have some, libations and get to know each other and meet in person, and anybody's welcome. 6 o'clock at Market Square Lounge.
Be there or be square. I'd be there if I was still there. Tim Jansen, someone's asking your best guesstimation of a trial date. Can you even make one? And your final thoughts, Tim.
I think March will be the soonest it could happen. I think Mark said it right. We have a system that you have people are charged with crimes and people have a right to defense. And sometimes you blame the lawyers, but that's our system. And if the person is truly guilty, the system will work, right?
Mhm.
Because a jury of independent people will get a fair trial and they'll make their decision. And so now we might not like the lawyers or their tactics. The system is supposed to cleanse that out and truth is supposed to come out. So I will remember people what Clarence Darrow said. He defends the rights of others by ensuring his own rights are ensured, right? He defended others because that's the process. And I do that. I don't pick and choose. I'm at the point now I can pick and choose the cases I take. But my job is not to win every case. My job is to make sure my client either gets a fair deal or if he's innocent, gets a fair trial and a jury decides. So that's the process. And we're not supposed to take it personally when the prosecutors win or lose, right? You walk away and the system is supposed to work. So far, the system has worked in this case. It's just been slow.
Mhm.
And justice is slow,
Mhm.
but it's very effective in the long run, right?
Very well said. On that note, love you, America. See you 12:30 tomorrow. Love you, Tennessee. Love you, Tallahassee. Justice for Depp.